Welcome to the Grow Fast podcast, where we talk with leading sales, marketing, and personal growth experts about how companies can accelerate sales, optimize marketing, and grow their businesses fast. Let's go. Hi, Vijay. How are you?
I'm well, Mark. How are you?
Awesome. I am up in Seattle. We're having an amazing summer. I think we've had 3 cloudy days since middle of May, some light showers, and the rest have been beautiful, sunny, 70 to 80 degrees. I think you're
Incredible.
In the Bay Area?
Yes, I'm just outside San Francisco.
Awesome. And how has the summer been shaping up for you?
The summer's been great. We had a wonderful family vacation right after school got out, and now we are just kind of enjoying that sort of like pleasant, mild summer temperatures here at home.
Awesome. Hey, do things in your field slow down during the summer? I've worked with some European companies in the past, and like things almost hit a dead stop, from July and August. But what about in the VC space?
Yeah, I would say things do slow down in terms of deal activity. For the most part, people are traveling. They are taking time off. This is not a good time to be trying to take initial meetings. And run a process because it's hard to pin people down. That said, I know people who kind of use the off season to train. They are workshopping their pitches, their ideas. They are talking to their customers when they slow down and have some sense of being able to tell them about pipeline and shape their own roadmaps. So I know on the founder side, like it can be a time to just kind of get the house in order ahead of the post Labor Day season for fundraising and everything else.
Yeah, I was going to say one of my most, successful, rewarding investments of time has been Tech Week Seattle last year, and it's coming up again this year. They run at the end of July. Mm-hmm. And I think it was because it was, in the summer, a very relaxed environment. And it's not, it's much smaller scale than what Tech Week in San Francisco. So it's manageable and it's a little more intimate. And I some of the most meaningful contacts and advice that I received happened during Tech Week in Seattle. And I think it was that relaxed summer vibe. But let me, I want to jump in because you've got this amazing amount of experience, and it aligns with a lot of the things that I'm currently going through as a CEO of BreezeDocs, which is a Gen AI startup. But for our audience, so they can kind of understand your background, maybe you can talk a little bit about your work at 500 Global, the book that you wrote, why you decided to write the book, and then what you're doing now. So you can do your elevator pitch, right? All that together now, and then we'll jump into our main points of conversation.
Thank you. Now, in a nutshell, I'm someone who has either been a founder and entrepreneur or of service to entrepreneurial leaders at various points in my career. And so, my past experience with 500 Global, as you alluded to, really focuses on 2 things. One, focusing on the connection between startups and larger corporates. Leading corporate innovation and partnerships around the world, which look like setting up accelerators and incubators with the likes of Siemens and LG and Visa and GM and others in different markets. And allowing those big organizations to tap into the innovation and potential of what different companies they could collaborate with, or finding ideas inside the organization that we can use accelerator and startup approaches to help them be more successful. And so did that for a number of years, and then stood up a portfolio value team to help the hundreds of companies in the portfolio with raising capital, forming connections to new customers and markets, and then thirdly, community, because the great resource is the collective network of all the other people going through something similar, but also solving similar problems in innovative ways. And so, after doing that and taking time in the last couple of years as an executive coach and as an investor, and then also as an author, as you mentioned. I wanted to distill a number of important takeaways. And what I felt was important was particularly related to fundraising. And so in the book, the funding framework, which came out in March with Leaders Press, there's a 4-step approach that is counterintuitive to many people. And so I wanted to distill the fact that rather than serendipity, you need systems in order to raise money, just like you would for other things that you haven't done before, but you need to be really good at, such as sales or hiring or other new skill sets when you're wearing the CEO hat. And it turns out when you are going to start a business and you're growing into the CEO role, you have to get good at this important skill. And it's okay that it's hard and people haven't done it before. It turns out you can get good at it. And so that's the first thing. And the second is, rather than feeling like it's a stroke of luck, those systems require you to drill down into a few things, and that's part of the framework. And so that's a bit of the connection there between my past experience and how and why I wrote the book.
Awesome. And I want to come back to the book because I agree with you that for many potential founders and founders who have just gotten started, the funding is this process is like this black box, and thousands of companies are trying, and some companies get it. And some people assume that it's luck. Well, they got lucky, or they had connections, they had the relationship, they were in the right space, they were, a DEI kind of thing. I mean, there's all these different kinds of excuses. Oh, yeah. And I think if you don't, take a peek under the hood, understand what the real mechanics are, and have a process to address that, then the chances of you progressing are extremely limited. So let's come back to that in a second. But let's go back to what, you worked with hundreds of founders. I think in your LinkedIn bio, you said in over 80 countries. I've lived and worked in, maybe 10 different countries. And there are different business cultures. But there are also, great similarities when you talk about at the enterprise level. When you look at founders, are there some traits that founders, regardless of where they are, you look for in terms of, with your investor hat on, they need to have these traits? Doesn't matter where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first is just their empathy and intimacy with the problem. It may be something they've lived and experienced themselves, or there's just this approach they have for getting close to the customer and following along with what they're experiencing. I say the customer, it could be a consumer, it could be the problem as it's felt. And this is the thing, I've seen people who are industry veterans have their own way of bringing their life experience to it. I've also seen people who are out of graduate school, but are learning machines that allow them to develop that same sort of knowledge. So it's not a thing whether you have it or you don't. You've either experienced it or perhaps gone and developed a way of learning and feeling it and caring about it in a strong way. So that's the first part, is that deep understanding there. The second part is, I think the trait is a very high say-do ratio. So there are people who they commit to something and then they follow through. And that is really important, because when you are the chief everything officer, you are suddenly, you feel on the hook for everything. And it's not easy to follow through. And so it seems kind of obvious, people say things and then they do them. But when the potential scope of responsibilities feels infinite, that's actually a very special thing, is in order to fulfill that. And then the third thing I will say is the rate of growth, the rate of iteration, and the ability to ship product, to put more customers into your pipeline, to do things in a way that is, just not just fast, but getting faster and improving the process that allows you to continue running at that speed. So that's I think a very hard thing to always predict, but you get kind of like see over time whether someone is able to continue at a very high rate.
It's funny. I can identify with all three of those in terms of, if you don't have the empathy or the true understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve, I don't think you can really have the passion for it. Because for me, the passion comes from, this is an awesome solution and it's going to make people's lives easier. Yeah. And I know exactly down to the every single detail how this helps them, because I went through the problems before. So I get that. And I think you could probably get that in a conversation, and maybe you have to do a little due diligence from your side to understand the problem, because you're an investor. You can't understand every problem that's out there initially, but you can do the work. But when you come to the say-do ratio, to me, that's also kind of like a trust thing, and trust takes time to develop, and so how do you, as an investor, because, you also have a limited amount of time too to make decisions. Do you have a process for measuring or quantifying their say-do score or ratio?
Yeah, the one of the expressions in the book is that investors invest in lines, not dots, and this is something that I had to coach a lot of founders on. Is people want to see your progress over time, and that looks differently in terms of touch points where you may meet with them. Or maybe they're going to see investor updates, or they're going to hear and follow your company, and you're going to be on their radar. And then they heard you're shipping this thing, and then it happened. You were going to enter this market, and you did that. You were going to onboard a particular customer and convert from a pilot to maybe a commercial relationship. And when you announce something, or you state your intention, and then you do it, that builds trust because it's consistency. Trust is this this amazing topic we can spend hours talking about, but there is out there a framework someone came up with called the trust equation, and and it looks different if you're an investor versus a customer. Obviously, like your perspective on it, but basically it is someone's. I'm paraphrasing here. It is a set of inputs. There's competency. There's consistency. There's what you might call familiarity or intimacy. Right? There are all those things. Those that together help build trust. So consistency is just one part of those three things, and then those three things are divided by the degree to which you are self-oriented or self-centered. In other words, if I'm approaching you in a really transactional way, and it's all about what can I get for my own benefit, maybe not even at your expense, but for my own benefit, that erodes trust, right? Totally. And so I think consistency, you're right, is a very big part of the trust equation. And just perceiving someone's competence, which maybe you can understand off paper, is part of it. You want to see and experience the consistency in order to have that key input for trust.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you're saying there. I've done a fair amount of sales training actually, and I part of my process, or the process that I use and also like to teach, is that in parallel with whatever you're doing in sales, whether that's cold calling, doing an initial meeting, setting the agenda, delivering a proposal, every single touch point that as part of that process, in parallel with that, you should be working on establishing and edifying trust. Trust takes time, as you just said. But you also alluded to that there are other ways that you can accelerate that. For example, a warm introduction, okay? Professional credentials, having published a book, all those things, these type of things help you to accelerate that trust. But if you're very self-centered and not very empathetic, like you said, people just are going to go no, I don't care. You know what? I'm not going to trust this guy. Again, both, founders and investors have this limited time window. So let me just ask you if you have any anecdotal, stories of people that have impressed you with their ability to accelerate that trust process.
Yeah, the people who accelerate the trust process are listening, not just pitching. Mm. What do I mean by that? There is so much performance anxiety and pressure when someone comes in to meet with a potential investor, and I've experienced from both sides as someone who has been a founder, and then someone who has worked with founders on portfolio, and then as someone who has made angel investments or been part of a syndicate group. What you see is people who just they come out guns blazing. They want to say their things. They have their 20 slide deck that they need to get through in the next 30 minutes, and they are trying to do a lot of the talking, as opposed to make it a back and forth and asking a lot of questions. So I might say, Mark, tell me about your ideal check size. Where are you in the history or stage of this fund? What's your process look like when you've worked with a company you're excited about? What are some of the things that you provide beyond capital, right? At this point, you are building trust because you're showing interest in actually being part of that person's portfolio and and asking them what a great investment experience and relationship on the board or whatever it looks like, so that you're listening and you care a lot about that person's priorities or values or whatever, and how they like to work, and not just unleashing the 5 talking points you have to get through in the next handful of minutes as the clock is ticking and you're worried about not getting it all out there.
Yep, I've seen it and experienced it, lived it totally, and it's interesting. I think that question process or asking questions is super valuable. I don't care what you're selling. How are you going to know what somebody's needs are, what their interest levels are, what their objectives are, unless you ask questions? But I think you can also ask very intelligent questions that allow you to demonstrate your subject matter expertise or the fact that you've done the research. So, for example, I noticed, when you invested in this company, you wrote, you were interested in it, or you found that investment because of this. Is that really what happened? I mean, what I'm saying is you bring up relevant topics to show that you've done your research. But that performance anxiety, I got to say, I've been selling my whole life. I started going door to door selling Christmas cards when I was 8 years old, and then I would be doing mowing lawns and then whatever. And at the enterprise level, since my early 20s, I can be in front of, a room full of, it doesn't matter, anywhere in the world, and I feel comfortable as long as I believe in my product, right? But when I started talking to potential investors, I remember I met a partner for one of the largest VCs in this area. It was at Tech Week, Seattle last year. Now we were already funded, seed funded. So I wasn't out there pitching an idea. And the person gave me his card and I just couldn't talk. I was mumbling about because I hadn't prepared. And the other thing is I reflected on it afterwards and I've realized, you know what? I've been selling products and services my whole life, but now I'm kind of selling myself and I'm asking for money. And that's a little bit different dynamic. How do you coach founders to work through that mental kind of flip-flop there?
Oh, that's a great question, right? Because it's hard to promote ourselves. This is very, very normal and very human. So I'm really glad you asked the question. The book has suggestions for how this can be done and some particular devices that people can use. So the key is, first of all, to really dial your pitch in to a couple things. At the earlier stage, people are investing in the team, and at the later stage, people are investing in traction, right? And so if they're investing in the team, the first thing they want to know is your authority and like why, you are someone special and you're probably the best team in the whole world to go after this opportunity or to address this problem, and establishing that thing about why you care. And I have seen people try and talk about this fundraising process from the perspective of, okay, this is our team, we're really good, this is the problem, here's our solution, here's the size of the market, and they're kind of going through this like checkbox because that's the way like
that's what we've been told to do. They've said you've got to address the problem, you got to have the market size, the solution, and then who's the team, and then like you said, check the boxes. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because we're now we've been taught for like 2 decades to think in terms of slides. And you do need slides. But what you need even more is to be memorable. And what we remember, Mark, is stories. And so if you start by framing your problem in terms of a story that person is never going to forget, or you start telling them a story where, they might have met 8, 12 founders that day, sometimes dozens in the course of a week. They're going to think back on Friday, like, who do I want a second meeting with? And they were like, Mark told me this great story about how it was Friday and their customer was trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat, like make something happen for their client. And because they were able to send something over, get a signature, execute an important sale, they were able to, with confidence, do something that was really special and that was like life-changing for their business and so forth, right? And so this situation, conflict resolution, like, every great story is like 3 acts, right? Like you can say that, not over 30 minutes, but in like 1 to 3 minutes, like you can tell a story. And so few people tell good stories, but they're inside all of us. And we share them over a beer or a coffee all the time, but we forget to introduce these stories that make us memorable. So your first goal is to be memorable, and the best way to trigger human memory is with a great story, because then people feel your problem. They don't just like know it from a statistical or financial metric perspective.
I think that's huge. And for me personally, product belief or belief in what I'm doing, it doesn't even matter if it's work, whatever I'm doing in life, I have to believe in what I'm doing. Otherwise I'm just going through the motions. But when you believe in something, people can kind of pick up on your passion for that and your belief. If you don't believe in it, you're like, yeah, it's okay. But the challenge is, some of the conventional wisdom is the founders have to be almost maniacal about their belief, And I having worked in Asia for, I don't know, maybe 20 years, places like Japan, Korea, where you have to be, understated, if anything, right? You should be. Sure. Otherwise, you're perceived as being arrogant. Now we're on the West Coast of America. And if you're in IT, it's like, oh man, it's the greatest in the world, right? Yeah. And so there's that conflict as well. But, you just brought up something, talking about the customer stories. We just did a couple things with 2 of our customers that made me a real believer. For me, that was important because I believe in our vision and I believe in where we're going, but to actually believe in what the platform can do right now, I needed that direct feedback from a couple customers, and they literally were knocking on the door and saying, hey, we can't access the platform. We need it. It's an emergency situation. But when they were using it so intensively, right? And the reason they couldn't access it was because of their entire internal firewall. So it wasn't even us, right? It was like, this is awesome. But it just made me that much stronger believer. This is a long-winded way to say that it's really important to have those stories and to believe in it. How do you coach, to pull, how do you coach your mentees to kind of harvest those stories from their experience.
Yeah. And this looks really different, right? So the story needs to be very relatable, and you want to think very carefully about who you're putting in as the protagonist of that story.
Okay.
So there was one medical med tech company, and they had a new imaging product which had been created by some top faculty at one of the nation's best medical schools. And so the technology was good. The team was like amazing, but people were not like sure, is this something that people are going to use versus MRIs and, what they know with x-rays, like are radiologists going to like use this product? Not, more so than is the team brilliant and are they, technically competent and all of that sort of thing. So yes, best team in the world. Check the box, right? The second part of the story required to rework it from saying, you're a parent. It starts like, oh, you're a parent at the playground, and your child falls from the play structure, and they're in a lot of pain, and you don't know if what's happened. You think they may have broken a bone. You rush them to the hospital, and then they're seen in the emergency room. And what usually happens is you wait there. You wait until someone can like read a chart. And depending on what's there and what they can read, right, they might be able to like see where something's broken. And depending on how many angles you can take a picture of their arm and see the broken bone, they're going to have an understanding of what is there. However, this approach takes many more angles than you can take with an X-ray. It's you don't have to have an expensive room with an MRI, setup that usually requires scheduling and getting someone in and out. And it's much faster, and also it is likely to find more ways in which, let's say, a bone is broken. Because what can happen, and then this is like the counterintuitive thing, is X percentage of the time a bone has to be reset. And so what would anyone want to do in that picture? They would, in that scenario, they would not want to have to go and re-break and reset this child's like bone. And so in this situation, the ER docs and nurses and radiologists are able to do something in a fraction of the time, figure out, oh wow, there's actually a second fracture or a broken area, and so they reset it properly and did it once, and now that family is able to go home. It actually costs less for the hospital because you don't face either malpractice issues or potentially someone having to come back and then redo the procedure again, which is like really expensive. Right. So lowering costs, improving patient outcomes, and ultimately not creating a really like unintended like effect where someone's bone has to be reset. So you tell the story, which is a lot better than like, X-rays only see, this percentage of the problem. MRIs are usually in short supply, and there's a long waiting time in the hospital of like, this many hours. So, therefore you should buy our thing because it's cheaper. And by the way, you don't need, and it's also got this many more features, right? So when you're just like focusing on the cost and the features, because we know this has to be 10x better or 10x cheaper, and those are important variables. We're going to be still forgotten because what people need to know is that there's a great story that matters to the people at the center. And so the hero of the story, depending on who you're talking to, can be that this medical team and these people who you want to win, and they come in and kind of save the day. And when you repeat that story from from a sales perspective, it's exciting for a chief of medicine or someone like that to endorse it and become a champion inside of your hospital or whatever. And separately, like investors, kind of like stop and think like, yeah, this is something worth investing in because yes, it makes economic sense, but people will remember and ask for like that particular treatment.
I love that because you originally talked about going in and talking to these highly trained medical professionals. The medical industrial complex tends to be bureaucratic, and there's amazing amounts of innovation, but it happens over typically at a slower pace, probably for safety concerns and approvals and all that. But also there's a certain mindset. This is what we do, and this is what we why we do it. And so to introduce change is, if you just look at the dollars and cents equation, might not wake them up. But I love that you start with parents at the playground. Their child falls, potentially possibly breaks a bone. And I'm like, right there, I was sitting on the edge of my seat, like, what happens to the kid, man? I want to know. And I'm not going to be able to find out unless they have this device. Otherwise, they're going to sit there and wait. And maybe they have to go to another facility with the MRI, and they're still going to have to wait. And anybody with children or relatives or anybody who's been in a situation like that knows how painful the waiting is. So you've kind of flipped the script there. Then I love it that you made the medical professional the hero because they had this device. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let me jump kind of tracks here for a second. I've talked to different VCs and then startup advisors, and one of the things that comes up a lot is founder or CEO mental health. Because as you alluded to before, you're the chief everything officer, and you could be dealing with getting that product shipped. You're dealing with customers, but there's all these different admins and issues as well, and then there's investors and board members, and you're getting pulled in all these different directions. And the business, people are like, oh, you're running a startup and it's like this. No, man, it is, every day, maybe sometimes several times a day, you can have these reversals. How do you coach founders in terms of trying to kind of level these ups and downs out?
Yeah, it is a roller coaster. And sometimes that's exciting and sometimes you want to throw up. Yeah. So, I think the ups and downs are there, and there are various like ways to manage that. The key is figure out what you need to do for yourself that means you're performing at your best, because the tendency, and I see this with founders of all ages and levels of experience, but particularly younger ones, is I can just grind this out. If I just, when we get to this next stage, it's going to be better. Or when this happens, then I will be okay. And that's not how life works. And so, I think there's a mental and a physical and an emotional set of aspects to this, which mean you need to take care of yourself. And a lot of founders are very bad at this, but they need to take care of themselves either with some level of exercise, diet, and sleep, because those are three things you can control, but they're all things you're probably cheating yourself on right now. Totally. Right? But you can control those things, and they affect your ability to make good decisions, think coherently, and put gas back in the tank so that you can go further. And I think the reframe for a lot of people is when they realize, I, as the CEO of the company or the founder of the company, am the single biggest point of failure. Right? It is not this line of code. It is not, what the junior marketing person posted on social media, or the, whoever is working on the conference booth. It is actually me. So if I were, thinking about it in that way, what would I want to do differently? And you don't have to pull every lever at once, But the key thing is like starting in terms of like, what is it that I need? And maybe it is you need time to think. And because this is kind of the ironic thing is like you're pulled in these directions and you want to be there for all the one-on-ones and the sales meetings and write the newsletter and the update and tell your story and go to that conference. And it turns out you're doing a lot of things that are reactive. And so if you, to the extent that you can reduce the reactive time and create time either with your co-founder collaboratively, if you're an auditory person and needs to talk to think, or potentially separately if you're somebody who needs alone time, and that looks like journaling or meditation or something else. The thinking time is very, very important. Because it allows you to reset and refresh and ask yourself, like, what are we doing and does it matter? Are we keeping the main thing the main thing? So, I have founders I work with who really like meditation and it's a daily thing for them. There are others who cannot like sit quietly by themselves in a room. But you know what? If they for 15 minutes they get up and they take a walk around the block, or something like that, like suddenly things happen. And so there are things we can do in order to both reduce stress and increase clarity, and those are actions, not just intentions.
I think that's some great advice. And if you invest in yourself first, I try to do it at the beginning of the day. I try to like do all three in terms of getting up, get my exercise, do some journaling, and then maybe even like go for a walk so I have some time to kind of reflect. It's hard though, because your impulse when you first get up is I better check the email, right? Which is the worst way to start the day, or social media or anything like that. So I think that's some great advice, because the other thing too is I feel like if I've invested in myself, if I did my workout today and I did my journaling or meditation, and if I did some reading, some self-development, and I ate well, no matter what went on with the business, at least I can feel good about what I do with myself. Yeah. And I've built myself up. I also, I believe that if you focus on a problem too much, the solution won't come to you. You have to start thinking about other things, and that solution will pop in there sometimes. So I love to go for a walk, listen to an audiobook, and I'll be listening to this book, and somehow they'll be talking about a problem that relates somehow tangentially to what I'm working on. And it's like, I'll get 3 or 4 different ideas right there. It's like, but I wasn't focused on the problem. It was just, getting out and kind of breathing.
Yeah. I think what you're touching on is there are more than one way to think, right? We grow up in an educational environment where we have deductive reasoning. And so it's like, well, I start off with this math problem and I get to the end of the solving the equation, and I get an answer. The thing is, that's just deductive. There's also inductive, there's abductive, like ways of thinking, because it turns out sometimes you actually know the answer. You need to like work backwards. There are other like times when you see different things, and the relationship between those things allows you to find the answer. So unless you take yourself out of this situation and like literally give your brain like better conditions and environments to be successful, you won't do that. There's a great study that was done at Stanford that asked people to do some creative exercise, and then had 2 groups of people. One went went for a walk first, and the other was just asked to get started. The group that, and particularly, they went for a walk, not on like a busy downtown street, but in a wooded, like more natural setting.
Yep.
You can guess which group was more successful, right? The group that went for a walk first was 30% more productive. And
that's amazing.
So they came up with 30% more solutions than the first group. And it's not an accident. It's what we need. And so there's a lot of work about energy. And I think managing your energy is one thing that you can control. A lot of people say, well, I just need to prioritize and manage my time. prioritize, yes, but you can only manage your energy. All of us get 24 hours in a day. So that is fine. However, your energy is something that is highly variable, and it is contingent on your circadian rhythm and the things that you do to jog memory, to improve cognition, to be performing at a higher level.
It's funny. I know there's a book. I think it's called The Energy Project.
Yes, by Tony Schwartz.
Yeah, amazing. I love that.
I highly recommend it. Yes,
time is your most valuable asset, and he's like, no, it's your energy, because we all get 24 hours. But if you're exhausted, if you're chronically stressed, if you're run down, if you're depressed, if you're forget about it. You can't outperform anything. So you need to build that. And I've read that a couple times. It's great food for thought, great motivation.
A wonderful book. Yes, I highly recommend.
Speaking of books, what other books or authors would you like top of mind recommend for founders to read? And it doesn't have to be like how to run a startup. It doesn't have to be that. It could be anything.
A couple books that come to mind. One is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. A wonderful book that is written by a former FBI hostage negotiator about negotiation.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. And there are so many tools there that are effective, and then you have to practice, using them, and then you find they're very useful. And it comes down to a term he calls tactical empathy in order to get to results. The other book that comes to mind is How Will You Measure Your Life by Clay Christensen. And he's very well known, obviously, for The Innovator's Dilemma. But How Will You Measure Your Life is a reflection on him as a professor at the Harvard Business School, seeing many alumni come back for reunions every year. And these people were on paper very successful, but they seemed deeply unsatisfied. And perhaps something else in their life was broken. And so he actually uses some economic concepts and business strategy ideas in order to measure and to execute on whatever you want your life to look like. But I think this is important for anyone who is in an entrepreneurial situation, because it's up to you. No one is telling you this is the job and what you have to show up and do and what success looks like. You have to come up with that for yourself, and that's really, really hard. And so the question of how will you measure it is very important, because that's going to influence what you get.
Awesome. So I'm going on a bit of a road trip next week, and I have now those two books, Never Split the Difference and How Will You Measure Your Life, plus the funding framework. So those are all three. Your book, your two recommendations, and your book on my list. Just out of curiosity, have you ever read or listened to Raval Navikant's Almanac?
Yeah, super.
That guy, I find that book is just distilled wisdom. He's just taken all that experience as a founder, and the ups and downs and all of that, and now he's out there. He's working. He's an investor now, and he's also working on himself, or he's been working on himself for many, many years, and he shares that very openly. And it's for me, it's been helpful at times. It's like reading something from Marcus Aurelius or something like that. If you took him, took 2,000 years later and plopped him in the center of Silicon Valley, it makes sense at this.
Oh, absolutely. I think Naval, is just one of these people who sees things, having gone very quickly through some roller coaster, and has come out not being broken, but perhaps seeing things, very, very clearly, and with a point of view that I think really resonates for a number of people, in roles and in situations like ours.
Yeah, I think one of his the memorable quotes. There's so many of them, but one of them is. Retirement is not sacrificing today for some perceived, event in the future. Retirement is when you are enjoying and living today fully for just just enjoying today, no matter what you're doing. Doesn't matter if you're working 15 hours a day. If you're really enjoying it, then you're kind of retired. It's like, so, of course he says it a lot more eloquently than I just did, but the point is there. So,
I'm fond of, I think it's a Bob Dylan quote. A successful person is someone who wakes up every day and does what they want.
Exactly. Love it. And I can't, Ravel, Bob Dylan, they're good at that kind of, phrasing that kind of stuff. Anyway, let me ask you, what are the dynamics now, or is it same as business as usual in terms of, AI startups, AI kind of related startups? Is Silicon Valley, or potential investors, is it the same business as usual? Or are there any different dynamics that are affecting the funding process?
Yeah, we are in an interesting place in the market cycle where since the boom of 2021, higher interest rates have mean less dollars coming into venture, in various segments, and like this sort of cyclical rotation out of some sectors into others. So what does that mean? A lot of interest in AI. So we're in the middle of this like step function change that we haven't seen in a long time, where what AI allows us to do is probably the biggest productivity jump, since like the introduction of the PC. It's I think that big, one of these things that will change all our lives. And so that is getting a lot of funding to the exclusion of like so much else. And I'm exaggerating slightly, but that is generally what is taking place. And so a couple things are happening. That means there are companies that need to figure out either path to profitability or what to do if they're going to continue, if they can't get access to funding because they're not one of the few focus companies that are sort of AI native. And what that also means is for like people who are building in AI and people who are investing in AI, you realize outside of building, let's say, the foundation models and things that the bedrock of the AI landscape, you've got people building valuable businesses with far fewer employees and achieving like extraordinary product-led growth really, really quickly. And what that does is it means top investors want to invest in that company that got to 10 million in sales in like 24 months with 12 people.
Me too. Me too. I want to invest in that company.
right. Like we're all being compared if we're builders to that. And so this is just like bonkers because like that's it's like going from something that was analog and artisan to something that's supersonic. So I think that is the thing is, founders who thought 3 years ago, oh yeah, when I get to $100,000 in ARR, I'm going to be, a series, I'm going to be a seed or a Series A company or whatever, like, $1 million of a Series A company, I'm going to have that. That's what product market fit will look like. And all of that is like changed because you're being compared now to like a supersonic category of startup.
So what kind of advice would you give a startup that has built an amazing platform, has a handful of customers that are very, very happy, but has not invested that much in sales and marketing because it was focused on getting the product, ready. Okay. Product is ready. but it's struggling to, because I bring this up because I think you do a lot of B2B sales coaching, or a fair amount, right?
Yeah.
So the product, the company hasn't figured out what's the repeatable process for bringing in their new customers and prospects. And, they've tried the AdWords, and they've tried, there's 18 different activities with marketing you can do, and they've tried them, but they haven't invested heavily in them because they were focused on, getting the product ready. So, what kind of advice, if they're going to go out and talk to investors, do they wait until they get more customers? But if they haven't, but they don't have the marketing resources to go get them, or maybe the expertise, maybe they need to get that hire in place.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a chicken and egg problem, right? Like if we had the traction, we'd get the money, but if we had the money, then we could get the traction. And so I think the situation can often be like the market we started in is not necessarily the market we are going to grow the most in. And so, how can we use the traction and the happy customers we have as case studies to move into a category where we're going to sell more seats, or if we're on a consumption-based model, like people will just use a lot more of it because of the amount of data they have, or the number of transactions they process, or whatever. Or do we think about the parallel or adjacent market that we want to enter, where people are just more aware of the problem, and they're going to convert much more readily because the problem is much more obvious in that space, versus the one maybe we started in because we worked in it before and we know the people and we're able to get off the ground in that starter market. So teams pivot, sometimes the product, and sometimes either pivot or expand to new markets as a way to keep growing. And I think product market fit is less and less a moment where we have this epiphany of oh, we got product market fit. Now the company can switch from build to sell. And instead it is build, sell, pivot, sell, build, again and again, because we're moving towards roadmaps and questions of product market evolution based on the fact that new models and new agents are being created every day that are better and better. And so our possibility of what we can do to solve customers' problems, if we're truly customer obsessed, changes with that. So we're at this interesting space of constant product market evolution, and just a set of capabilities that change for us if we're thinking about product roadmaps, every few weeks instead of every few months or years.
So are you saying that, your pivot to you're not changing the platform, but you're pivoting to a new market, or could be segment, for example, SMB to enterprise, something like that, or industry. We're going to go from this industry to that industry.
Yeah.
That future pivot, or that pivot that you're trying to go through, could be part of your pitch to say, hey, we've got this figured out. This is working. What we need to do is pivot to, maybe account-based marketing for enterprise versus, just tons of outbound emails, for example. Will investors consider that, or do they want to see?
They want to see that you're already. They want to see that you've already started the journey, and that the data is coming back that it works, and that they're not investing for you to continue where you are, but rather they're investing in a future state. So they put capital in, and then you're going to get to this much larger state of the business, or with additional products and features. So I'm taking your money not to just pay salaries and continue with where we are now, but to be able to create something new, because the evidence and traction is so obvious and clear from the pilots and experiments we have now. in terms of expanding into this like additional segment. So that is, I think, that from a messaging standpoint, what's there. But also what the investor wants to know is you're not just going to like land on that market or iterate the product once, but there's a long journey of evolution for the product, because the market is going to change as customers' expectations get higher, and also your ability to make even richer and more impactful products will improve over time itself.
Awesome. Last question, and then I want to talk a little bit about how you engage with your customers or the market you serve. What are you seeing as effective ways for companies to reach prospects these days? Because, back in the day, it could be the phone, it could be the fax, and then it was email, and then LinkedIn. And now everybody's just flooded with everything all through all channels. So it can be very challenging in the context of B2B. What are you seeing as effective ways to reach your target market?
It's very hard. It's like we've gone in and ruined every channel that was good by overwhelming it, right? I think the key is finding the B2B customer who in that moment knows they need and in that moment wants to engage with you, right, for your product. And so if your product is bought, not sold, it may be that content is a really important approach, because the customers out there trying to educate themselves.
Right.
And so that is, one path. If your product is sold, not bought, then, it might be going to the place where everybody congregates, like at industry convention or, in certain networks and trusted communities, like maybe law firms refer you or someone else, right? Like then you're kind of, there in that moment where someone, needs and wants your product or service. So those are some of the, less automatable approaches to building, out a channel that is high trust. To go back to our earlier point, but not that email doesn't work or that social media isn't effective. Those channels are worth experimenting with, and so that you figure out which part of it is going to generate a result.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. It's funny, like you look at Google and they're struggling because I think 60% of the revenues, it's funny to say Google is struggling. I mean, I wish I had those kind of struggles, but anyway, 60% of their revenues, 60% of the revenues come from AdWords apparently, and AdWords is really struggling right now because everybody's just going to the LLMs, ChatGPT, or even to Gemini or whoever, and just and doing their queries there, so they can get a more thorough, comprehensive answer. And so, how do you monetize that? And so obviously, ChatGPT's kind of figured out a bit of that, but so what we're doing right now is really trying to dig in and understand how do the LLMs provide their responses. What do they look at? And we did a query for our industry, and I was really excited because we came up as number 3. And there's a couple big, 500-pound gorillas that have been in the industry for years. And so I was, the fact that they were ahead of us, I was like, that's fine. That we're even in the same paragraph with them. That's amazing. Then I found out that just like with traditional search, there are content bubbles. And the LLMs do that too. They look at, previous queries and feed you information that aligns with what they perceive that you would be looking for. And it's just, so I think if you can crack that, that's a whole startup right there. If you can be the firm that says we can figure out how the the major LLMs will feature you in any queries related to your space. That kind of like SEO optimized for LLMs. If you can figure that out, that's a business.
Yeah, now that is a conversation that is starting. Is how do we not just optimize, let's say, our website for SEO? Yeah. How do we optimize our website for these large models to read? Because a lot of the stuff just needs to be rewritten, and not just for keywords, which is what we've been doing now for however many years, but for like certain types of information, and like it can be retrieved, and then that's good, because if they keep finding that they retrieve stuff there, whether it's ChatGPT or Perplexity or something, then they do come back again, and then if someone asks like where do I go for this type of solution, it might surface your company, and that's a nice thing if it's able to do that.
Absolutely. The last thing I would touch on is that we're kind of originally I was kind of skeptical about is the buyer intent tools. They can tell you, hey, it's pretty granular right now who in what organization is searching for a product or has been to your competitor's website, and that's pretty powerful. But like you said, we have a tendency to kind of ruin all these channels eventually. So even if you get that intent, they're in the market for it, you still need to get in touch with them. And again, if emails and social media doesn't work, so it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, going back again to the question of trust, people are most likely to believe in recommendations from people they can relate to or people like them. So, for a long time, people have been looking at reviews and influencer marketing, things like that, as like the next thing. Again, that too can be done badly, and you can have a lot of review sites and even like influencer marketing campaigns that where you can overdo it, and it can be it can actually erode trust, because it looks like it's just paid advertising as opposed to like objective like influencer content. So all of these things are good in moderation and are valid as long as it is accurate and authentic.
Absolutely. So let me ask you last question here. Tell us a little bit about what you do at GAI Ventures. Is that how I'm saying that right? Yeah.
Yes.
AI Ventures.
GAI Ventures. Yeah. So at GAI Ventures, what we're doing is we are building AI businesses that impact traditional industry, and working with experienced people with domain expertise and industry knowledge in order to build business to business like vertical, typically AI products, and that means we get to know people who are seeing the world in perhaps a different way than the rest of their industry. They understand the problem in a very acute way. And there are new products that they would like to introduce, and businesses that they would like to build. And we think it's a very exciting time to be that form of inception stage capital, and bring our technical resources and our engineering team to help just go very fast. Because as I said before, like that ability to go fast is a critical capability for a startup, and we want to create that capability very early on in the companies we work with.
So are these companies that have already received funding, or are these at the concept stage, or where are they at?
It starts with a concept. It starts with a founder and a concept. And from there, we want to build together the right type of business. And subsequently, it can be funded.
Awesome. So, well, and if people wanted to find out more, what's your URL, or what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah. So, two ways. One is LinkedIn. I'm keen to connect with people there. And then I'm also on Substack. So Startup System is my newsletter on Substack to just kind of follow what I'm thinking and writing. And then finally, gai.ventures is our site.
Awesome. Hey, Vijay, we could probably keep talking for a couple of hours here. I mean, you've got a tremendous amount of experience, and I think we just scratched the surface. But I took literally a page full of notes here, and I got some book recommendations. So for me, this was a good return on investment for the time spent. Thank you so much for being on the Grow Fast podcast. And do you ever come up to the Seattle area?
Once in a while, yeah.
If you're ever up here, let me know. And I may be down in the Bay Area end of September. Great to go out and grab a cup of coffee or something.
Let's do that. Sounds great. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Vijay. Take care. Cheers.
Take care.